Pat Cox, good afternoon. You're campaign director for Ireland for Europe, which incorporates a lot of parties, including Generation Yes and whatever. Why have you lent your support to Ireland for Europe?
When we had the last referendum, and you have to accept the results, you can't be a sore loser. I was on the losing side, but I was shocked at the result.
Right.
I thought it wasn't in our country's interest. I thought if this ever came back again, that we, and I mean, people, not relying parties, government and so on, to get out and do something. Several of us, Bridget Laff and Brendan Halligan, myself and others, started a conversation. That conversation broadened to include young people, women, farmers, trade unionists, economists, solicitors, business people, you name it, really religious people from different walks of religious life and so on. And we got more and more into a track of saying, well, if we all think the same way, we can build an organisation. It's one-off. It's come together to do this. It has motivated a fantastic number of people. We have Women for Europe as a group. We have the Charter Group for trade unionists. We have Farmers for Europe. We have Economists for Europe. And Generation Yes in particular has just been magnificent. They have got a fantastic number of young people up and down the country. We had, thanks to them, and a few of the older lot like myself, 60 teams out campaigning last weekend. None of that happened through civil society the last time. And in particular, Generation Yes has brought something that digital migrants like myself can't bring. The digital citizens that they are reached out there on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and they've been really fantastic at that outreach.
Why set up an organisation? Why not just leave it to the political parties? Why not just leave it to the Greens and Labour and all of those who are campaigning for the yes vote?
I think in a general sense, politics in our country is at a kind of a low ebb.
Yes.
It's clear from the opinion polls, I'm not telling you in any hostile way, it's simply self-evident that we have at the moment probably the most unpopular government in the history of the state. That's to do with circumstances and so on in recent history, and there it is. And so maybe just some of the forces that normally sell things to us politically are not best placed to be the best salesmen. But there's another issue as well, I think. Reflecting on last year and indeed on other referenda, political parties are designed to fight and win seats in elections, and referenda are different. And let me give two examples. The emergence last year of Libertas from a standing start to being a big player tells you something already how different a referendum is. Our emergence, we didn't exist 6 months ago, except as conversations. And I do think, without exaggerating, we brought something really positive to this campaign. It just shows the difference. I think if we emerged with 3 months to go to a general election, we'd be pretty naive to suppose, you're going to sweep all before you, because there's embedded systems and branches and parties and structures and canvassers. But the referendum clearly is different, and we're a proof of it. The fact that we can come out and have an impact and do that in a context where months ago we never existed.
There's been a huge debate about this on Boards.ie, but like 3 questions that I would have that I'm looking for simple answers to, and not just the blurb, if you understand.
Yeah.
Why should I vote yes? What benefit, if any, to Ireland will it be if there is a yes vote? And what happens if the majority vote no again?
Why should you vote yes? I think sticking firstly with the text, that the text is a good text. It gives us more democracy through more powerful elected MEPs, more democracy through more say for our elected TDs and senators in draft EU law, more transparency when our ministers vote abroad for the first time ever. This is staggering to believe. They'd have to do it in public. They did it behind closed doors. They can come home and blame it on Brussels. No more of that stuff. Let's know who stood for what and why. It will give us as citizens a right of initiative that we don't have under Bunnock na hÉireann, that we could have under Lisbon, and it will allow us to keep our commissioner. And all of those elements are there as simple, good, democratic reasons inside the text. To do with the context, Europe has been the best partnership our state has ever had. We've lived kind of 2 separate stories as an independent state politically. One was the time of our post-colonial connection to UK. It was a place where we exported our people instead of our goods and services. It was a place where we exported 3/4 of our goods, 90% of our agriculture. We were kind of a failed economic entity. We were the poorest region of the British regional economy in 1973. Joining the EEC and now an EU, this isn't, you know, a slot machine. Vote yes, pull the lever and 10,000 jobs come out. That's naive, no one thinks that. But the context has been powerful. We reversed emigration. We went from 2.8 million as a population to 4.4. Our labour force doubled by more, you know, we went from 1 million to 2 million. Our real incomes trebled, taking out inflation in that period. We did it by growing exports of goods and services 60 times after stripping out inflation. And where do we sell those goods and services? 80% of what we produce is exported, and 2/3 of what we export is exported to the European internal market. It's our bread and butter location. We've been a first division influencer and player inside. Let's not risk to be a second division player in what has been a first division experience.
That's a fair answer. One of our members, does no mean no, or will there be another spin of the wheel? Will there be a Lisbon Treaty?
I think what will happen, because you've seen it already in the last 24 hours, Mr. Murdoch's Sun newspaper in Britain has abandoned the Labour Party, has embraced the Conservatives, and has said to Mr. Cameron, we'll do it because we want you to have a referendum to sink this treaty.
Right.
So what's going to happen? We're going to get a dynamic, if we vote no, where we're the facilitators of a torpedo going from the UK across the Channel towards European integration. And don't expect, as some people say, oh, nothing changes, everything is the same as before. Life is about not just the static in-out. Life is about the dynamics of where you are. And I don't want to find us getting into the slipstream of scepticism that never served our interest, doesn't represent our values, and won't in the end put bread and butter on our table.
So many questions here. Here's a good one, and I'll read it verbatim. Bearing in mind the misinformation and dirty tricks in this poster's opinion that have been put out by the no side, do you think that referenda are a good idea, or would a method of ratification similar to the other members of the EU be better?
Well, we have a referendum because there are foreign policy issues in this treaty, and because we have a Supreme Court jurisprudence, a case law under the Trotty case in the 1980s, the prudent thing was to hold the referendum. I think when you're dealing with something of this complexity, the referendum is not an ideal instrument. If we were saying, for example, do you want to make sure when your minister votes in EU that they vote in public, yes or no? That we can have a debate about. Do you think that the Irish Army should participate in EU missions of peacekeeping? That's easy. But when you get a thing that's 700 pages long, you know, everything comes up. And as you see, I mean, there's stuff out there, lies, 184, no way, Jose, it can't happen. Under law, we decide our minimum wage, that's 8.65, no one can change it. Not the European Union, not the European Court of Justice, only we in Ireland. But that's out there, scaring people on low wages and scaring them into trying to get them to vote no. Stuff that I regard as political pornography is out there. Aborted fetuses and the shot of a lovely old woman trying to scare old people or scare people with pro-life values to say you vote yes and look what's going to happen. I'll tell you what's going to happen. Keep your values, keep your babies and keep your granny alive and still vote yes because no one wants to do anything nasty to anyone.
Will it ever be possible for an EU referendum? Not the first time in Ireland again. Will there be a kind of a better deal?
I don't know. My sense of this, if I may step back out of Ireland to the European thing, the European Union, the member states, the different parliamentarians, the different governments have spent a long time trying to do this spring cleaning reform. And I think if this gets over the line on this occasion, frankly the job of Europe is to spend less time introspectively on how it designs itself and more time delivering the goods to Europe's citizens in terms of, you know, the real deal that matters, jobs and energy security and climate change issues and so on. So I don't think, if this gets through, that the European Union, as a union with a partnership of 27 states, is going to have much appetite to start over again and say, well, that's now in the bag, let's start something new. I think this is, for a generation, what's going to be on the cards and nothing more.
I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.